Good morning, afternoon, and evening. You are listening to the Economic Podcast for Gen Z. I'm your host, Stefan Bartel, and today we'll be diving a bit more into cybersecurity, some big four, and to help me understand all of this, I have Felix Lehner here. Felix, can you please introduce yourself to the audience and let's get this show on the road?
Yes, thank you, Stefan. So my name is Felix. I'm from Austria, I would say directly from Vienna, working in cybersecurity for the Big Four. I am currently the cloud and infrastructure security lead and doing a lot of international projects along IT. And therefore, I'm very happy to have you also here by my side, and we can talk a little bit about what is coming in the future and how is Big Four and everything is going into the next direction. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. So, can we perhaps begin by saying what is the Big Four?
Yeah, absolutely. So Big Four is just a synonym for the Big Four companies or advisory and audit companies. There is Deloitte, then there is PwC, KPMG, and or KPMG and EY, which are basically the four big audit firms. And I'm currently, as mentioned, working at Deloitte. And yeah, we have a lot of different parts where we are working on. So there is also audit, there is tax, there is consulting, where is also a little bit more than in a legal consulting and also in a technical consulting direction and so on. So there are very huge companies which doing a lot of different topics in their fields. And so I would say because of the size, you can learn a lot of new things, and this is actually the most interesting here at the Big Four. Yeah.
Well, then let me steal the show a bit and say I'm delighted to have you on. And I couldn't help myself. I apologize. But could you explain perhaps your day to day and how you got to the Big Four and your position and what drew you to this direction where you're in now?
Yes, absolutely. So what drove me to the Big Four? Actually, a phone call, because in the end, Deloitte called me and asked me if I want to work for them. And that was actually the beginning of how I started working for Deloitte. At the beginning, I was working for the digital forensics team, where I was more or less working and collecting data for different forensic use cases or forensic projects. More or less than when the new partner from Deloitte Austria went from Accenture to Deloitte, I was feeling by my own that there will be coming a huge change for Deloitte. And I was very interested to be part of these transformation from Deloitte side. So I changed my field from the forensics to the cybersecurity. And the last 4 to 5 years, I worked for the cyber team, building up the capability from, I think we started from 3 to 4 people to now nearly 40 people. So we have a lot of people. One of the most bigger parts is more the strategic part, but we also have the technical part where we want to more and more develop people in terms of technical skills, and also support companies with operational and integration topics, actually.
Can you explain to our audience your jump from forensics, maybe a bit on what that department does, and then now your
Yeah,
shift to cybersecurity? I had
yeah.
prior, a couple of weeks ago, a gentleman also explained to me, Roy Nagar, for those who want to catch up on that episode, also explained cybersecurity. And this sparked more or less my inspiration to have you on and to have this conversation with you.
Hmm.
So what was forensics? What is forensics in a Big Four? And then your switch to cybersecurity. What is this?
Yeah. Basically, it was quite interesting because forensic was more technical stuff. So we have a lot of tasks which were very technical in the terms that we were collecting data, using tools and techniques to extract data, to index data, and so on, so that we prepare all the data for the guys who are doing the actual forensics, so the legal team in the end. In the cyber team, when I changed to the cyber team, it was more. on an organizational level, because I would say Deloitte is very strong in everything in which goes into the direction of strategic business development and all the strategic development regarding the cyber topics. So when there is about looking how the people are skilled and how we can change the organization or transform the organization into the real direction so that they are working with the topic in a better sense, then this is what we are currently doing more in the cybersecurity consulting. So it's not that deep technical. We sometimes have deep technical projects, but in the end, more or less, we are doing a lot of work where we try to understand the company, where we try to understand the people, the politics, how the processes in the company are working, and how everything is working together. Because this is a huge complexity when you have people, processes, and also technology, which are somehow, impacting all the three parts. So you always have people which impacting processes and technology and everything around. And this is actually the main part where the differentiation between the forensics and the actual cyber security part was. I would say that both parts are of their own kind interesting, but I would say cybersecurity is for me the more interesting was it and is it now, because you are more likely to work with people, and this is the
Mhm.
most interesting thing. And I think this is also where it gets quite interesting to become from a technical perspective. You are trying to study and learn in the technical direction, and then you are working more and more towards people business.
Would it be possible just to highlight data security and cybersecurity? Would you be able to give an example of where you and maybe your team, an older example, stepped in to help a company so our audience can understand better a project example?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give 2 or 3 good example. I would say one of the most important one was we had in Austria once there were a lot of ransomware attacks, and there was an organization which faced the actual problem that they weren't aware about the maturity of their business and their IT, how they can face this. So we built some kind of assessment, which were on an organizational level, but also from a technical level. And we tried to identify all the security measures and how they deal when something like that happens, which means we tested with different software how ransomware could move in their IT, in their
Mhm.
network. And on the other hand, we also figured out what current measures they have implemented in their IT security management solution, or yeah. And basically, there was these gaps which we identified, which also shown that specific technical but also organizational parts were missing, which they then fixed. And also in this service which we provided to the company, we also figured out that they have a huge impact, or this has a huge impact on the existing business continuity management. So there's a specific management organization which is focusing that business is going on, and we identified some issues which they need, or which they then worked also on improving their playbooks and how they will face all the issues when ransomware is appearing and how they will deal with such an attack. So this is some kind of what we did there. Second topic was maybe also interesting, because there is some kind of capability in some organizations, bigger organization, which is called Security Operations Center. And those security operation centers are usually getting a lot of data. Problem is how, from a legal perspective, when you have a lot of different companies, all the data which you are collecting could also include like personal information, and all these personal information can be somehow collected by the tools, and then can come to some company which is actually not allowed to get this data.
Mhm.
And we had the problem that there is a central unit working on securing all these companies around, but then faced legal issues which they had to somehow technically face to assure also the service on one hand, but also be compliant on the other hand. So they need to be clear that they are that all the legal requirements are fulfilled on the one hand, but on the other hand, the technical solution is working properly and everyone is secured. So these are some kind of projects which we are doing here.
The oldest scam that I kind of know growing up was always, I don't know, a prince in Nigeria needs money and I have to send him some money so he can get
Yes,
more money away. Um,
yes, yes.
you're describing very significant malware and cyber intrusions into the firms. Have you seen an elevated rate of sophistication given the advancement of AI?
Yes, so I would say from two perspectives. Also from the technical perspective, when you see all the more and more upcoming vulnerabilities which are facing current software producers, because we have more and more vulnerabilities found which are really complex to find. This is the one hand, and on an organizational point of perspective, we have more and more improvement in social engineering, so the actual manipulation of people so that they will provide money or information or whatever to others. So we have a lot of different development in the field. I think that there's also a very interesting part that because of the fast development of AI, people are more and more trying to develop new solution, but more and more ignoring security. So they want to face or improve innovation in the organizations, but are not really focusing on security, which then later on a later point will have an impact on their business. But this is not the people are not aware currently, and so they are building and building and building, but not in a quality way so that everyone is assured that this solution are good solutions.
So one can say that they're moving fast and breaking things, and they aren't really defending what they're building.
Yeah, yeah, right.
You had mentioned at the very beginning that cybersecurity, the team has grown from a team of 3 to 4 to roughly 40.
Mhm.
Is this just because more people have, I don't know, internet adoption, or has there been a large drive in one way or another in the industry where cybersecurity is more on demand?
I would say it was always on demand. Like from the last years, I would say we are growing this team since I would say the 4 to 5 years. But in the end, we have seen in the Austrian market a lot of strategic, like people who are investing strategically in the topic cybersecurity and also want to align the business with the IT, so that there is a need to evolve IT, but in the involvement of IT, there is also the need to improve security, and therefore we need to see, like, we in Austria, we are not the most innovative people currently. We are more and more trying, and I see a good move the last 1 or 2 years that there is more and more development in Austria, also in an innovational part. But I think especially when you have these innovative companies, you more and more need to also invest into security, and this is what we are now seeing also. Yeah.
Are your clients predominantly Austrian clients, or do you also have international?
No. Mostly, from my point of perspective, like I'm doing a lot of international projects. We have also people which are doing only Austrian projects, but I would say for the learning effect, I think the most interesting ones are the international ones. So when you have a lot of people in different countries, I think for you as a person, it's very important to have such kind of projects, because you are learning a lot of different people, different cultures, which also have an impact on security in the end. And this is what's from my point of perspective really interesting, to have this impact, how people are doing in different countries and how this affects also like security. I had projects in countries where quality is really not that interesting, and then you see how careless they take all the IT tasks and didn't watch that security at all. So you see that there is completely different culture, and this culture is really impacting all the innovation and also security parts. Yeah.
In Europe, we have a very overarching setting and structure with the EU and the huge pioneering that they've done concerning data protection. Do you
Mm.
see a general gap between EU countries that must abide by these rules, especially concerning personal data, consumer data, versus countries outside the EU? Or would you even say that inside the EU there are countries that are really strong and they really care about this cybersecurity on a national level, so to say, and then other countries that falter?
I would say from the current political state, the EU is more and more caring about this. We have more and more legal requirements in terms of NIS2 regulation, and there was at the beginning the GDPR, and then there are more and more security-related legal requirements upcoming from EU. I think I cannot rate now which
Yeah.
country is more or less doing the stuff in the right way, but I would say basically I see that there is, from a central point of perspective, from an EU point of perspective, movement into the right direction to increase security, and this is very important. Like as we have currently the current situation, political situation, and also situation with Ukraine, Iran, and so on, that we are more and more need security, and this is, I think, one of the important parts to have these compliance rules and that companies are fulfilling those. Yeah.
You had mentioned the GDPR rules. Can you perhaps give
Mm.
2 or 3 sentences on what this is?
Yeah, so GDPR is actually a rule set from EU, which they set up some years ago, I would say. There's like, I really cannot talk, say how many years that was passed, but in the end, it's about protecting the people's data. We in EU, we are more and more interested into protecting our people and protecting the data, and this was the drive from you to improve this more and more and give more power to the people. And I think that it was a really good point to protect this. I also see the complications for the companies to provide the processes, provide all the to be compliant against the rules, because EU is more and more developing these legal requirements. But in the end, I see that from a business perspective, more and more companies are doing hard to fulfill all these. So there is a gap between the necessity of what is really needed and the point of how many requirements can a company fulfill.
Do you think one can make the argument in order to fulfill the EU requirements for GDPR and for these regulations that it does take a lot of time and capita away from the business's original idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a lot of money going into cybersecurity, data protection, and everything. There is also the question always how to ensure that companies in EU are competitive,
Mhm.
and I think that more and more regulation make it hard, but I see also the need for those regulations. So it's a little bit yeah, it's not that easy to have a real good balance between those two topics,
Mhm.
but as I think the EU is doing it actually quite well, so from this perspective I'm actually quite okay with how it's working.
The polemic situation you had brought up between Russia, Ukraine, and also the madness going on in the Near East. Um,
Mm.
would you say that this has given a hyper focus on cybersecurity in the last 5 years?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yes. Also, like security, and also in regards of the military direction, we have seen more and more invests into military development, also into the direction of cybersecurity development, everything which goes into defensive security topics. But I would also say that more and more new startups are looking into the direction of defense. This was 2 years before, it was not that a huge topic, but more and more um, startups which is focusing on defense and not only into physical defense, also into cybersecurity defense, are coming up in Europe,
Mhm.
which I'm thinking is very interesting because last 2 years there was nobody thinking about such a kind of scenario, that it wasn't like that much important. But now, as we have seen, the invest from EU is upcoming. There are also more and more startups showing up in this area.
The attraction toward AI, especially from ChatGPT, but now we have Mistral, we have I think the Austrian one was Claw, OpenClaw or something of this
Mm.
nature. You have Anthropic, of course. What is the impact of AI in cybersecurity?
Um, I would say it makes everything more complicated because, as mentioned, like we have the fast development of solutions,
Mhm.
and basically nobody is like looking at security, which is makes it a little bit harder for all the implementations from a technical point of perspective. But I would say that for the younger companies, it's quite good to have the greenfield and to have everything into place, because we already worked a long time with now NIS and all the regulatory stuff. So there is a lot of documents already existing which AI can help you
Mhm.
to take these requirements and implement it right. And I think that for the beginning, AI would also help you in terms of trying to go into the right direction. It's not always the full benefit to have AI as a consultant, because as a consultant you have the long time inputs, like how to deal with stuff and how specific things had ended in the last years, so you are quite aware about how to do it right. And I think that with AI you are able to get the first steps right, but with to get everything at glance, you need to also talk with some consultants and figure out how to make it polished, so everything is working well.
Now that you've been in this industry for a couple of years and you've been in IT in general, what are some of the things that have surprised you the most?
In terms of AI or security?
Both. Are you content with the evolution of AI?
I was actually at the beginning, I wasn't that aware. I wasn't aware that AI will hype up that fast. Like when we think back like 2 years,
Mhm.
we said like AI will be back in 20 to 30 years, but now we already have it, and it's working quite well. Um, I would say also from the current impact which is showing on a political area, we see that AI is more and more getting also the attention on a political level, and I'm curious how this will work in future with the existing political structures, because we are currently have a lot of politics doing decisions on topics which are currently up to date. And I'm very interested how the AI Act and everything will be applied, and how everyone, like the companies and so on, will work with those regulations. So I'm very curious how this will work out.
For those on the younger spectrum of the audience listening in, what advice would you give them concerning university studies to enter IT fields for cybersecurity?
um, I would say when you're thinking about security or IT in general, I think it's always an interesting study. I'm curious how learning and working in future will look like. I think that one thing will be always important, to have someone who is able to quality assure output, because AI is a tool and it cannot be responsible for your tasks. So in the end, you as a young interested people in IT or economics or other stuff, you are the one which will be responsible for the output, and therefore be interested, learn hard, and try to improve your skills at glance, because this is what matters in future. That you will be the one who is assuring that quality is matching up the speed. because AI is providing the speed and human is providing the quality. And in this kind of scenario, I think we will end up.
Okay. The industry itself, you had mentioned that it changed from 4 or 5 people to 40. Where do you see it going forward with a lot of startups, as you had mentioned, they're going more on the defensive. They have more of an IT understanding going in. AI, of course, is fueling the fire because Claude and ChatGPT are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Do
Mm.
you presume that this will be the status quo going forward?
Uh, I will be quite curious how this will end up actually, because we are currently seeing at the Big Four a huge shift in towards the people who are really developing the value, which are really focusing and working hard on improving or delivering quality. Those are the ones which the Big Fours are very interested, but I'm not quite sure how it will be from organizational structure point of view. I think that all the bigger companies which are doing this mass consulting, so doing a lot of slide preparation and Excel sheet creation and so on, they will need to change in a way where I'm curious how this will look in future. We as Deloitte already, as some kind of answer to that, built Deloitte EMEA, which is now the you can say one company which is collecting all the sub companies from us to one bigger unit. The idea is also to more integrate all the people which to each other and be more involved with different people from different countries. And I think this is some of the moves which you will see more and more in future for the other ones, because there will be some organizational changes in terms of these AI topics, and I'm curious how all the other big fours will work with this. So
The big
yeah.
four are often seen as like, I don't know, I don't want to say perhaps a market pulse check, but because they employ so many people, there is
Yeah.
often this scare that AI and white collar labor force will have friction going forward in the future. Do you see this as a personal employee, not just for Deloitte, but of course for Accenture and the other firms as well?
It depends. So I think that everything is which is in regards of building slides and building Excel sheets will be reduced to some kind of level. When it's about more of the people business, like everything which helps, like um, yeah, like sales or all the direct contact management consulting or something like this, I think this will still be a part because it's very human like.
Hmm.
So there will be on one hand more people. So I think that AI will take some kind of jobs which are very AI, which you can reduce with AI basically. But on the other hand, I think also have an increase on topics which is more in going into the economical, psychological topic, and figuring out how to rethink roles and responsibilities from people and how people can work together. And I think this is more and more also getting interesting for universities, for businesses, and this is maybe something where it can also shift to.
I will agree. I find that, I mean, my love for economics is to see that it's a social science and that we are primary drivers in this and that it breaks down to the individual. And I find that AI will be more of a helping hand over everything else. The fear is that, of course, when one starts off at university, with not a lot of experience, these, I would say, I call them Excel monkey jobs, to build a slide sheet, to do the VLOOKUP, to do the PowerPoint, to look over all of this, this is more
Mm,
or less where you start in a huge, especially in a massive firm such as Deloitte.
yes,
That
absolutely.
that's how I always saw them. And then once you have not only rising minimum wage laws, for example, but also AI implementation, you're going to see a focus, I think, on high skilled labor. And this will
Mm,
leave a lot of early graduates wondering when they can step in.
yeah, I think that's you brought it to the point because I think what's really important for the young people is to have a really huge motivation to learn stuff by their own. Also thinking about how they can be on top of all the topics which are currently coming up, because companies are searching for people who are skilled. And I think that in future, the companies will look more into the direction of people which are motivated and have a huge know-how already existing, instead of just looking for people who are able to do their stuff. Because those which are motivated, interested into all day learning and also into improving the company, those are the ones which are more interested for the businesses in future. So also for the Big Four, I think that more and more smaller consulting firms will appear, and this is also maybe interesting for all the young people to find companies, small companies, which can provide you with a lot of knowledge and which skills you up so that you have a solid CV which you can provide to other companies when you want to work later on with in a different role or whatever. So I think this is also something which is in future be more and more important, that you have advisory companies which are also providing you as a junior the knowledge which you need to be part of the the bigger table.
Yeah, yeah. Well, right now it's Big Four. Let's see if it ends up being a Big 15, especially with AI coming into the situation, and maybe you see some destructive market chaos going on. And I think this would be very healthy
Mm.
for the smaller firms and also for Big Four. More competition, I find, is always better, especially in markets like this. However, as we are wrapping up the episode for today, I wanted to ask the final question. What advice would you give for young people interested in this area? You had mentioned motivation prior, but what's something that motivates you to continue in this industry?
Be motivated, be creative, try to focus on everything which you are likely to do for your life. I think it's very important to do a job which you are interested into it, and when you have passion for it, then you are also working on it day by day and trying to improve. And this will be the thing which is then also to for the companies to be part of them. So do whatever you are interested and do it with full commitment, because this is the most important thing. And maybe one last sentence, because of we talked before in regards of everything in like terms of studying and working. I think it's also very important. I did it too. Study, but also try to work. There is a lot of universities providing you different study programs where you can also work. And I think it's more important to have a work which supports you in doing your university program, and you can do both, because then you have the years of the like for your CV, you have the years in your CV working for some companies, but also have the education from a university. So I think like having university and work in one, I think this is really advantage.
Well, thank you, Felix, for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure to hear your insights and perspectives on the matter. For all of us, for all of those listening at home, I want to say thank you for tuning in. You can, of course, reach us with any comments or critiques at the economic podcast for Gmail at gmail.com. For Gen Z at gmail.com. And of course, we're active on Instagram and LinkedIn, and we are trying to figure out other social media avenues. We are currently on Patreon as well. And for the summer, we even have decided to go forth with some merchandising, and we'll make sure we get those out as soon as possible. And Felix, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.